watching Primetime Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. The security of data collected under Aadhaar has been under the scanner over the last few days. And now a study published by a research facility established by the Reserve Bank of India has raised questions on the benefits of Aadhaar. The study, published in October 2017 by an autonomous research facility called the Institute for Development and Research in Banking Technology, raises red flags on a number of issues related to Aadhaar, right from what are the real benefits to the massive security breaches of data that are possible, and even to whether the system is efficiently delivering services to those who need it most. The study concludes saying there is a need for caution in the manner in which Aadhaar is used by the government. But is that caution being exercised? To speak on the Aadhaar debate, I'm joined this evening by former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, R. Gandhi, Ritika Khera, Associate Professor of Economics at IIT Delhi, and Amit Malviya, the BJP's National Head of IT Cell. Welcome all. I'm going to start with Mr. Gandhi. And Mr. Gandhi, if you could talk about some of the salient points raised in the report. Perhaps the strongest observations were on possible security breaches, where the study talks about the entire Aadhaar database being sort of a sitting duck for possible cyber security attacks. Do you think that these concerns are being addressed?
Thank you. This report from the IDRBT, it is a research report. So naturally, any technological development that is being used by the financial sector, IDRBT has a natural interest to research on the idea and bring out whatever their findings. So the reports, typically, I have gone through these reports quickly, and you find that, like a researcher, it has brought out what are the theoretical possibilities of where are the chances of getting any biometric data collection process, then preservation process, and later on access, how theoretically there could be breaches. So it doesn't straight away mean that it is what is happening, and I think we should not jump to that kind of conclusion. The research report, you should not read too much into it and concluding that this Aadhaar or similar biometric information is faulty. That is not the right way to conclude after reading these reports. It brings out the theoretical proposition how biometrics will be, various types of biometrics will be working, how it can be used, what are the merits, and what kind of security cordon that will be required, and continuous monitoring that will be needed. So that's what it is highlighting. It is not that by straight away one can come to the conclusion that the arrangements are faulty or it is likely to be misused very often and now and then. That is not the issue.
Okay, that's a fair point. Just put in perspective that the recent controversy, if I may call it, sparked by the Tribune report, where the reporter managed to access the Aadhaar database by paying a paltry sum, occurred after this report came out. And as Mr. Gandhi explains, that this lists out the possibilities. Let me just go through some of the things that they say. In terms of security concerns, they say, thanks to Aadhaar, for the first time in the history of India, there is now a readily available single target for cyber criminals as well as India's external enemies. I want Amit Malviya to comment on this with the contextualization that there is no, attempt here to demonize the way Aadhaar is, but there are concerns. There is a very respectable institute which has red flagged these concerns. My question to you, Mr. Malviya, are we at the stage of at least accepting that there are concerns?
Tamanna, I want to make two quick points. First, the biometrics is the soul of the Aadhaar system because Aadhaar is entirely meant to identify individuals. Now, we've not had even a single instance of biometric breach in the last 7 years that Aadhaar has been around in various form. Point number two is that the Aadhaar captures, over and above the biometrics, your name, your date of birth, your address, and your sex. And your mobile number and your email ID are optional should you want any communication. Now, these are details that are also available, for instance, on your voter list, which is also available on your ration card, and most of this is available in the public domain, and you don't even have to pay 500 rupees. It's right there to Google out and get it. Now, having said that, there was recently an instance of Tribune that you referred to. That was a case of unauthorized access to an agency's database which had used Aadhaar as an authentication. So obviously that, even though looks like a breach in the UIDAI, is more of an unauthorized access on the part of the agency that was using it. Now, if there are certain areas like these that come up, we must have guidelines, we must have policies, and we must have punitive action very clearly outlined in the statute, and that must be followed. But if you look at the benefits that Aadhaar provides to everybody, not just to the state, which has already saved as much as 60,000 crores and has identified several lakhs of bogus accounts that were getting the subsidy from government on various schemes and has cleaned that up, there is also the benefit of streamlining our economy and financial reporting. Now, research reports such as those published by the RBI's research agencies and several other individual NGOs or cybersecurity experts are consulted from time to time, and they give their inputs, and any government, and for that matter any agency of the government, looks at it very actively. And just one last point, any technology solution, there will always be attempts by people to hack into it, and the authorities have to be one step ahead. That is how what is the nature of the game. But having said that, the biometric system has never been hacked. It is absolutely secure.
Okay, I want to get Ritika Khera's point of view, and in fact her work has been quoted in this report. But just before I do that, because we talked about biometric, there is in great detail ways enumerated in this report on how biometrics have been hacked. And I just want to quickly go through it for the benefit of the viewers. 3 easy steps that this report talks about. The residual fingerprint of a user can be obtained from a mobile phone or any other surface. Lifted fingerprint impression can be used to create a dummy finger. The dummy finger can be put on the fingerprint sensor to claim the identity. Now, one may argue that this is a little far-fetched. Why would anyone do it? But it is possible, so says this report. Ritika, your counter to the point that Amit and a lot of people make, that the security concerns raised about Aadhaar are exaggerated to some point, because theoretically anything can happen.
I don't think that's true. To carry out phishing attacks and identity fraud that have already happened on a very small scale already, all they needed was people's demographic information. Yeah, they didn't need the biometrics to do it. And people were booked in Kanpur, and one MP was defrauded of 27,000 rupees recently. So this idea that as long as the biometrics are not breached, everything is okay, that's not correct. Secondly, even that claim is not exactly true, because last year I think one gentleman called Samir Kochar was able to show that an enrollment agency or an author, the AUA was illegally retaining biometric data on that device. And when he pointed out this vulnerability, he also got rewarded with an FIR, just like the Tribune reporter. So I feel that these data security concerns are very serious, and the thing to do is you must put a stop on it. Instead of putting their foot on the brakes, the government is putting their foot on the accelerator and creating even more vulnerabilities. We are being forced to link our Aadhaar number to our bank accounts. It's true that a lot of demographic information is out there, but if it's not linked to our bank, if this Aadhaar number is not linked to our bank account, you're creating a break between these data silos. If you link it up all together, then access to one leads to a sort of domino effect. And like I think you said, sitting duck or whatever it is, it's like putting all your eggs in one basket. So why do you want to create this vulnerability? This is very basic stuff that people who do data structures will tell you, that this is not a very robust manner of creating databases. The creation of a centralized database itself is creating a vulnerability.
So the question is, what do you mean when you say put a break, Ms. Khera? Because I want to come to the second point raised in this report, and what Amit Malviya also pointed out to, which is the cost-benefit analysis. Now, the NIPFP estimates that the Aadhaar system creating it, integrating it, etc., will cost about 37,000 crore rupees over a 10-year period. That's up to 2021. The government claims it has already saved about 14,000 crore rupees. The report names some Canadian agency which says the government has actually incurred a loss of 97 crore rupees. Mr. Malviya, do you think there are discrepancies, and how do you judge how beneficial Aadhaar has really been, especially when you bring into context last mile delivery problems where people who really need their ration are not able to access it because of perhaps some technological issues? When you add in those human costs, is there now a different way or different metric to look at it?
Well, you know, I want to make two quick points here. One is about having a centralized database that the speaker before me spoke about. That is also true for ration card. That's also true for birth certificates. That's also true for your electoral roll. And that's true for pretty much every system that exists. Anybody who has a smartphone today, or for that matter, even a normal mobile phone, has all his details out there with the telephone operator. Now, how is it that you're willing to trust the telephone operator system more than a UIDAI, which is at the moment a very, very secure system as far as the biometrics is concerned? So we have to put our concerns in perspective. And I've said that again, that if there are any issues whatsoever, then they must be addressed. Technology is an ongoing process, and let's not forget the UIDI has been built by the best technology minds, and therefore it is not something which is a job that's been done by some novices there. Now, having said that, the other issue that you raised about human cost and about last mile delivery, I've been reading some of these reports that you're referring to, including one in Jharkhand and recently another in Uttar Pradesh. And let me tell you that those instances of starvation death or whatever that you're referring to, which have been reported in the media, have nothing to do with Aadhaar. I have personally verified this with the DM of Jharkhand, for instance, and he's told me that it isn't the case. There have been subsequent reports that have come out and that have completely disregarded this theory that was put out. Now, I understand there is a very vocal anti-Aadhaar lobby, which for some reason wants to oppose it, which is good, because in democracy and in a system like this, we need all kinds of voices. But let's not get so paranoid that we forget the good that it is bringing to us as a whole.
Khera wants to come in on the starvation deaths, so-called starvation. I don't know, maybe you want to reword that sentence, Mr. Malviya, because if people have died because they didn't get food,
yes,
for whatever reason,
it's not the case.
It's unfortunate. It's not the case.
No, that's not the case.
It's not the case, says Amit Malviya.
I have read several reports and they have pointed that it is not so.
Okay. Ritika Khera, you wanted to respond.
Yeah. So let me start with the starvation deaths. The Food Minister of Jharkhand has admitted that they were at fault, at least in the case of Santoshi, where her family's card was struck off because they were unable, they tried, but they were unable to link their Aadhaar number to it. And these cards which are struck off in this manner are being passed off as the savings numbers that are making everyone keel over and think that Aadhaar is doing all the poor people a favor. And you know, of course, only 9 people have died so far due to these Aadhaar related disruptions in the public distribution system. But according to us, 9 is 9 too many. Even those who are managing to use the system are finding it very difficult. You know, the whole village might be standing there and saying that you're tamanna, but until the machine works and your fingerprint works, you're not going to be able to get your ration. So people are really being tortured by this system, and I feel the government should really take note of our concerns and not just say that this is some kind of anti-lobby, etc. Let me come back to that NIPFP report which you were talking about a little while ago. You know, when the NIPFP report came out, I had published a counter to it in the Economic and Political Weekly, and I had pointed out that their entire report was based on ad hoc assumptions. They said we don't have the data to be able to do these calculations. So when I pointed out this problem in the report, they themselves admitted that it's true, we don't have the data to be able to do these calculations, and therefore we were forced to resort to these ad hoc assumptions. Yet, this was in the previous government's term. Yet, that government and this government have pushed ahead with this project. Now, let's talk just another minute about the savings figures that are being brought up. I've already said how when people's names who are entitled to these things are struck off, it could be pensioners, it could be ration cards, it could be job cards under the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Very often, all the names that are struck off are passed off as ghosts or bogus or whatever it is. In fact, these people are sitting in the village and wondering, why did my pension stop? Why has my name been struck off the ration card list? That's one set of problems.
No,
Another problem is that,
Sorry, I'm just going to come in. I'm just going to come in on this point, and I want R. Gandhi's comment on it as well, because we're talking about the number of people who could be impacted. And here I want to come back to the report, because see, as of this point, there is this study which a respectable institute has done. It is a collation of a number of views. So here, Mr. Gandhi, in terms of verification issues, the study says that assuming that only 5% are denied government benefits due to issues with Aadhaar, does it mean that this exclusion of a small minority is condonable in a democratic society? It goes on to say that in a country of 1 billion, that 5% is 50 million people lose benefits. That's larger than a number of European nations. So my point, Mr. Gandhi, is that are these crucial issues which need that kind of concern? Today you have Mr. Amit Malviya saying that the DM tells him these are not starvation deaths. Do we need to investigate and know for sure at the very least?
See, I will not be able to comment on government schemes, how it should be done. But as a technician, what typically is done is that when one type of authentication, there is a problem, then typically the commercial institutions, or for that matter even the government institution, should go in for the second type of authentication. So there should for exception handling is a general process one should follow. If Aadhaar, for any reason, Aadhaar related information is insufficient or not accessible, either because of the gadgets not functioning or the hands not being clear, for whatever reason, then there must be additional alternate methods through which one can prove the identity. So that's the way generally things will be managed. It is not that Aadhaar and only Aadhaar. So that in practice that will be difficult. Normally, institutions will have an alternate method.
Just a quick rejoinder from you, Mr. Malviya, because I know you have to leave. At least let's set alternate methods in place, if you can hear me. All right, I'll come to Amit Malviya in a bit, but I just want to move to another point, Ritika, and you wanted to complete your earlier point, but you said earlier in this conversation that the government needs to put a brake. We need to put a brake. What are you proposing? Because there is a section of people who are saying, oh, there are a lot of problems, let's scrap the whole thing. Doesn't this section also need a reality check that we've gone too far? Now there is a commitment. 86% of the population and counting has an Aadhaar card. We can't just say now toss them in the bin.
Right. So let me start by talking about the break. Let's talk about the public distribution system, and what Mr. Gandhi said is very important. There have to be alternatives. But in fact, this Aadhaar, which was supposed to be voluntary, has now become compulsory and is now being made the only form of acceptable ID. So that's one serious problem. In the PDS, we have been proposing that they should use smart cards. People can use smart cards which don't rely on internet connectivity and they don't rely on fingerprints. And you can still have your last mile authentication and a digital footprint for that transaction. But the government is just unwilling to listen. So this is one sort of break that I'm talking about. But more than that, what is more important is that we have to put a break to linking up all these data silos. My phone account, my bank account, my travel, because once everything is linked up, then you can build a 360-degree profile. And there is quite a lot of literature that just the creation of this kind of panopticon and all-seeing entity on top of people has a chilling effect. It leads to self-censorship. So if we want a robust democracy, then I think we really do need to stop this mindless, I would say, interlinking. There is no purpose limitation in this law. Why do you want to link Aadhaar for a cremation? You know, there have been people on Twitter who have been saying that their, you know, some relative was denied a cremation or a burial until they were able to produce Aadhaar. A woman, a Kargil martyr's wife, apparently died recently in a hospital because even though her son was showing the Aadhaar card on his phone, they said, no, bring us the original, whatever that means. So, you know, this kind of mindless application where it is costing people their life and causing a lot of hardship, that has to stop.
Okay,
and then there's your final question about whether we can junk this, and some people are saying we shouldn't.
Yeah, do continue, Ritika.
Okay, so you know, when people say you should junk it, I mean, I feel that if we all as a country decide that this is a foul project and that it has neither benefits for the poor people, plus it's creating the possibility of identity fraud, it's creating a whole new ecosystem for identity fraud, then we should stop throwing good money after bad money. We have to cut our losses.
Okay.
We can't just say because we spent 10,000
cut our losses. I just want to really get R. Gandhi's view as a final word on that. And Mr. Gandhi, I know you will not get into either the politics of it or the heated debate about junk Aadhaar or keep Aadhaar. I just want to ask you simply that the concerns raised today, do they, in your view, outweigh the potential or current benefits of the Aadhaar system as you see it?
See, any business or commercial activity, it needs identification. It is a prerequisite. And by extension, even in economic activity, one will have to establish, even for private transactions with one another. So a unique identification it facilitates commerce, economics, and others. So that's why just because a government institution has started, all these questions relating to democracy and all has been raised up. Otherwise, if you treat it purely as an economic activity, establishing an identity is a prerequisite. And because of that, once identity is established, then either side of the party is confident in dealing with one another. So if Aadhaar is not there, still for some other identification will be asked for by either party of the transaction. So when something which is commonly utilized, it facilitates, it speeds up the transaction, it gives greater confidence to the parties indulging in the transaction, then generally it should be welcomable. Any breaches will have to be obviously taken care of through appropriate security measures and the deterrent measures and punishment measures. So that's the way I would look at it.
Okay, maybe I'm sorry, I'm right out of time, but just in the end, maybe a little difficult to want to throw out the baby with the bath water. Aadhaar seems here to stay. Can the loopholes be fixed? Well, definitely there should be a move to do that. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. R. Gandhi, Ritika Khera and Amit Malviya this evening. That's all the time we have on Primetime Debate, but of course, stay tuned to Bloomberg Quint.